Hello everyone, my name is Srikanth. I am the host of the show Inspire Someone Today. This podcast brings in personalities from a cross section of our society who will share their perspectives, learnings, hacks, and experiences that can inspire all of us in our journeys. Come, join me on this ride.
Hello, listeners. New Year wishes for great learnings, wealth of knowledge, and the joy of growth to each one of you, my dear listener. This is Flashback 10, and I am your host Srikanth, bringing to you a quick summary from the last 10 episodes. The last 10 episodes is a tribute to all our guests who have taken the untrodden path, made paradigm shifts, and have shared eloquently their journeys, lessons, and wisdom. So let's jump right in. Give it a listen. Here is the list of the last 10 episodes. Siddharth Rajsekar, a college dropout to India's leading digital marketer. Pooja Rai, architect to a deep desire of making a social impact by creating playgrounds for the underprivileged kids. We had Anton Musgrave, who spoke about future is about flourishing, a lawyer by profession who went on to become a futurist. Sushant Kalra, who gave a pass to the corporate role and turned out to be a parenting coach. Ravishankar, pursuing the passion of becoming a filmmaker. Nasser Hussain, ex-captain of the Indian rugby team, went against the Holy Grail and pursued a career in sports management and excelled in rugby. Paul Dupuis, from a newspaper boy to the CEO of Randstad, currently being coached by the world's number one management guru, Marshall Goldsmith. Deepa Natarajan, executive coach, helping people find harmony and congruence in achieving their goals. Mayur Channagere, pursuing his passion in photography, etching a name in the field through clarity of thought, risk taking, and putting people at the center of everything. And finally, we had Krishnan Raman, who focuses on a principles-centric coaching practice and a proponent of 7 Habits framework. Isn't it a galaxy of stars who challenged the paradigms, who treaded the untrodden path? So let's get started. Our first pitch stop. Follow your passion. Defy the odds. Our first pitch stop. Follow your passion. Defy the odds. Quitting corporate job to becoming a parenting coach like Sushant, a college dropout turned out to be India's leading digital marketer with an audacious goal of redefining the education system, and the corporate professional who nurtured his passion of being a filmmaker that has fetched him numerous international awards in the very first go in Rugby Venkateswaran. Listen in.
The trigger point was my own backstory, like when I was 8-year-old kid. I came back home from school. My grandfather used to work for the Britishers back in the day. And he did not complete schooling. He finished his fifth standard. And he was the eldest son out of a big family of 7 brothers and 5 sisters. Literally like a cricket team with substitutes, big family, joint family. And for him, the pressure was on because he had to make it happen for the family. And his father, my great-grandfather, he was a typist or something for the Britishers. And so he was also very good in English, and the English came down from there. But they were typical employees. They were not able to sustain such a large family financially. So my granddad got into this mode of reading. He used to be a voracious reader. He used to read like P.G. Wodehouse. And if my English is good today, it's because of grandpa. He used to speak to me in like proper British English when I was young with good accent and all that. And that's what I kept hearing when I was a child. So when I came back home from school and I asked my grandpa the question, I asked him, Tata, why should I go to school? I asked him this question. He came back to me with a Mark Twain quote. He said, never let schooling interfere with your education. As an 8-year-old kid, it was a bouncer. I did not understand what he was saying. But he reiterated saying that whether you're inside school or outside school, keep learning.
It's a very strange story. and I think I've told this so many times to people. So me and my wife, Monica, we got married in 1995. And as the story starts, we didn't want to be parents. We were clear that we will not have children ever in our life. And that's how it started. And the reason behind that was that when I used to see parents, all my cousins, even younger cousins, and my friends were married before us. So I used to observe this that all the children are saying that parents are always on our case. So when we are sleeping, they're saying, get up. If you're not sleeping, they say, sleep. If you're studying, then say, it's bahut ho gaya, you should go out and play. If you're playing outside, they'll say, do this. If you're eating something, don't eat this, eat this. So it's like they feel that all the time parents are instructing, telling them what not to do, and saying it's painful. And when we spoke to parents, it was the same story. So they used to say, pata nahi hai, sota nahi hai, pita nahi hai, sunta nahi hai, and I think he's now gone into a bad company and he's not started responding. He's become adamant and stubborn and all that. I said, what's the point in bringing a life into this world when you will have trouble and they will have trouble? What's the point? Let's not have it. It's perfectly fine. We'll go this way. But then I say in India, getting married and not having children is almost impossible. Specifically for a huge Punjabi family. I have approximately 100 people staying within a kilometer's radius of this house. So every time it used to be, what's wrong with you? What's wrong with you? Why aren't you? Why aren't you? And even the dog on the road was saying, any problem? So finally we gave in after about 6 years of our marriage. Aman happened in the 7th year. And then when Monica was pregnant, that's where it all started. I said, this is not what I want to go through. This is not what I want my child to go through. There has to be some method, some system, some process to this. It can't be bad for everybody. It's like we all have great stuff. When we leave, our children are better than us. But the journey was very exasperating for people when I saw. So I said, let's research. So that's where it started. Aman is right now 21 years plus. So in short, based on a lot of extensive research on this topic, observing children, observing parents, writing a lot of stuff, reading a lot of stuff. And I took that plunge in 2008. I had to convince my wife and my parents first that from a career being a vice president with a multinational company, dropping everything and saying, I want to do something like that. And everybody in the family, everybody, it could be from my relatives who won't have even met me for years, came back and said, you're mad. How can you train parents? Parents will never come to you. If you want to do something, talk to children. Go train children. Go coach children. Parents will never come to you. Thanks to my parents, thanks to my wife, thanks to my children, they said, okay, fine. If you want to really ready for the plunge, go right ahead and jump.
Even as a child, I was fascinated with comic books and animation. I used to watch Disney and Tom and Jerry and used to wonder how these pictures move about. It was fascinating for me to find out how these images are brought to life. In college, I was part of an amateur drama troupe, and I started my career as a advertising copywriter, and I had the opportunity very early in my career to write an interactive script, multimedia script for an animated CD-ROM for children. So that was my first exposure to animation. This was way back in 1995. The trigger was when I was working on the project, we had a delegation from Australia, and they said that we don't do quality work out of India. So that kind of stuck in my mind, and I said that someday I want to make an animated movie that at least people will watch and not say it's a bad product that has come out of India. So it was one of those emotional moments, but it kind of was there in the background of my mind, and it was brewing. After 20 years, it has taken the shape of Punyakoti today.
So some key nuggets out there. Never let schooling interfere with education. Human beings are born with unlimited potential. Let's tap into it. And what looks easy and effortless is a produce of years of compressed experience. Couldn't have been a better time than now to hear from our guests about goal setting. That's lesson number 2, a pragmatic approach to goal setting. following your passion needs the conviction and the risk-taking ability. With that comes the important requirement, having a goal, vision, and purpose. Two renowned coaches shared powerful insights on the importance of cause and effect in our goals and the magic in pause and reflect. Reflect on the why. Listening to Deepa from episode 41 and Krishnan Raman from episode 43 on the pragmatic approach to goal setting.
The number one thing, I'm going to pick up on the word goal, and I want to disagree there. I think the number one mistake we do year on year is to set new goals. I've been a victim of that. And it's not about setting goals, especially for highly driven people. Highly driven people, you set a goal, they'll go and they'll achieve it. And they say, oh yeah, I did that and I did more than that. And that's easy. We've got a lot of motivation, we've got a lot of determination and the willpower, and we'll go do it. That's how most highly driven people are. So it's not about setting goals. It's really about, and it's not about is it a 3-year goal? Is it a 5-year goal? The first step is to say, define why do you do what you do? And I'm not a psychologist. And at the same time, analyzing our past, analyzing how our experiences, how our education, how people around us have shaped us, how experiences have told us to think in a certain way and act in a certain way. All of those things become very key because that defines almost the fire in the belly, the why. Why do we do what do we do? And then the second step is defining what is the cause that I am ready to give my life for. And that cause is not an attainable goal. That cause is a bigger sense of purpose as to why am I here? What's that cause that I'm going for? So let's say, for example, someone wants to set up an NGO for handicapped people. He or she does not have to have a past experience that says that, this person in my family was affected and therefore I have a vested cause to go towards this. You can find a cause that attracts you and give your life to that. But you need to connect the dots between the cause and the why you do and your why. That is the why that has shaped you to become who you are. And once you connect these dots between the cause, the bigger cause that you are here for, then it becomes easier to set finite goals. 6 months, 1 year, 2 years, 3 years. And that's the whole process of going about goals, because then you have got the fire in the belly and you also got something aligned to something bigger. And when you're aligned to something bigger, it gets much easier to assimilate people, to assimilate situations, to make sure that everything falls in place.
When we say principles, a lot of people say this is my principle, whereas a principle is a natural law like gravity, which belongs to everyone. And a principle is nothing but a cause and effect. But there are methods which could vary. Like if you want to mix sugar in coffee, there are various methods of how you can mix the sugar. You can use a spoon or you could use a shaker. But the principle is simple. For the sugar to mix in coffee, the coffee and the sugar have to move together. That's the principle. Similarly, if you ask someone, if you are driving a car, what stops the car? They may end up saying it's the brakes, but actually the principle is friction. So many times I have found that people would confuse values with principles or methods with principles. So methods can vary, values could shift, but the principles remain the same. Like somebody would say honesty is always the best policy. And I tell them may not always be, because there's a principle behind everything. So Srikanth, can you think of a situation where dishonesty could actually be better?
Maybe in the case of life and death situation?
Yeah. So let us say you have heard about psychosomatic diseases and how important the psychological condition for a patient is to recover. So imagine somebody has a grave condition and the doctor knows that this person has a very negative mindset. And if they come to know of the condition, they'll become more negative, which impacts the health. The doctor may actually end up saying that I saw your reports and everything is fine. So from one perspective, the doctor is being dishonest, but it actually helps the patient grow, improve the health. Or maybe let's say a leader who's watching one of his team members not functioning well and knows that this person needs some kind of a motivation, goes and pats the back and says, hey, you know what? Don't worry, you're doing well. Now, it may seem like a dishonest statement, but it actually helps the person move. So when I say principle-based approach, what I mean is a principle is a cause and effect. So I'm a diabetic. I ask people often, is sugar good or bad for me? And they will often say it's bad for you. And I tell them it's neither good nor bad. The principle of sugar, it is increases sugar. So when my sugar drops, sugar is actually a lifesaver. But if it's normal, then it can be harmful if I eat it. So what I mean by principle is whether it's a business principle, it's a life principle, there are principles all around us. And if we take any decision based on principle, the results are pretty consistent.
Wasn't it practical? Set smarter goals, not smart goals. People don't fail in achieving goals, they fail in taking action. And there's no safe way to being great. Moving on, lesson number 3. How do you differentiate amongst competition? Like Pooja Rai, the social impact leader, says, there is no one metric to measure impact, and one has to constantly think of ways of being ahead of competition. Nasser Hussain, CEO of Rugby India, chimes in with his perspective on being a differentiator and says, we are all in the same boat. Eventually we'll get there. Practice sharing and collaboration. So that's lesson number 3 on differentiating amongst competition.
I think you can draw a lot of parallels between growing a sport and in business, like trying to promote a product. And it will be the same. There will always be competition. I don't think there'll be any single product or sort of area that one would get into where nobody else is. So there's always going to be competition. There's always going to be people who want to establish in that space. And you're going to be up against those sort of challenges. The easiest thing to do is say, hey, it's not going to happen, and just not do it. And that would probably be the worst thing to do as well. Coming back to rugby, what we as a board and as a federation looked at our strengths and our weaknesses and try to just focus on that. What are our strengths and how do we take that out into the market, so to say. And in terms of the strengths, what are the things that we can do to mitigate it in terms of making it less a weakness for us?
I think in a for-profit world, it's very simple to, define success. When you're trying to create an impact, there is no one metric. There is impact, then there is environmental impact. So the triple bottom line that we hear often about. So I feel that from a social enterprise context, I would say funding increases your reach and your impact. And it is definitely important. And we cannot see funding and impact in silos. Like they're not opposite, right? So we do need funding to maximize the impact that we are trying to create. Within our organization, we do follow the concept of impact first. So whenever we have to make a decision where maybe with one choice we can make more profits and money versus where we can make impact, we will always choose on how we can create more impact. So yeah, I think that's one of the differences that I see. And in terms of success also, we do have impact metrics and they are not purely number based, right? It's not purely just how many children we are impacting or how many playgrounds we have built, but we also look at, what are the changes that are happening through these playgrounds. So sometimes, we do take a pause to understand, go back to our playgrounds and, rework, keep the feedback loop active. But to answer your question, yes, we do optimize on our costs as well. And I feel, of course, our focus is around impact, but funding is an important aspect of, I feel, any enterprise, whether it's a non-profit, impact focus or otherwise.
Yeah, that's wonderful. Impact first, you lead from making an impact and then everything else follows suit.
Exactly, right.
And when Pooja is not making playgrounds, you're delivering play in a box. How did that innovation happen and how critical is innovation in this particular space?
One of the questions that most early stage startups, right, not necessarily non-profits, ask me is like, are you not scared of your competitors? Anyone can start building tire playgrounds. And so I feel that the only thing you can do to beat your competitors is to be ahead of them. And that is why innovation is very, very important.
the last of the series of lessons, lesson number 4. Effective leadership lessons from the folks who have walked down the path, both professional leadership as well as personal leadership. Paul Dupuis, CEO of Randstad, shared Zen leadership lessons on episode 40 and shares the effective traits of a leader. Renowned futurist Anton Musgrave joined us from South Africa and spoke about reimagined future and key tips to stay relevant as the world steps out of the pandemic mode. Finally, Mayur Channagere, who has collaborated with many global personalities including Usain Bolt and Pandit Ravishankar, shares his perspective on building a team as a leader. So, an amalgamation of compassion quotient, resilience, flourishing is the crux of effective leadership lessons. Build a team that believes in you, says Mayur.
So, first of all, we know that there are critical characteristics. To be an effective leader, there are some critical characteristics. We talk about things, and this goes back to the beginning of time when we were doing assessments and appraisals of leaders. We talk about leadership competencies. Certainly, the original companies were based on strategic thinking, the ability to build followership, the ability to create a vision and express it to the team, the ability to execute for results. Succession planning came into the picture. And then we started to hear about things, of course, in the early days about IQ, intelligence quotient was actually a leadership competency. Wasn't that interesting? You had to be smart to be a leader, which we've since discovered the smartest people don't necessarily make the best leaders. That's been flipped upside down. Then after that, all of those, let's say, traditional leadership competencies came the EQ, emotional quotient. We started to talk about how the leader needed to be in touch with people and understand people. So we saw the meter start to swing a bit. Right. And I believe this is still true, along with those other competencies. We heard a lot more about values of the leader. And then this phrase, walk the talk, came into the picture. More recently, and I think especially with COVID, if we talk about really the true critical characteristics of the effective leader, is the next Q. It's the CQ, compassion quotient. Because engagement and empathy is one thing, but that doesn't necessarily mean action. Compassion is empathy converted to action. And we've all kind of faced that, I think, in the past year and a half with COVID, where it's one thing to feel how the other person's feeling. It's another thing to get up and do something about it, especially when someone's struggling and suffering. Then we add in things like resilience. I absolutely believe that resilience is an imperative for every leader to possess. If you think about my definition of resilience is one that I learned as an ice hockey player growing up in Canada. It's about bouncing back when things don't go well. In the sports world, that means when you lose a game, coming back even stronger the next time. And resilience is only built from having that taste of the loss, of losing the game, or of maybe not performing, or of having something happen that you couldn't predict. Resilience is built, and there's a great phrase in Japanese. It's actually a proverb. Directly translated, it goes like this: as the rain falls, the roots grow stronger. So the more you've been stuck in the rain, the stronger you get. That's absolutely true for leaders. So that's why resilience is a critical element for all leaders. And one more I'm going to add, because I was in India through COVID, and certainly we continue to battle it in India, around the world, and here in Japan with my team, but is optimism. I think the effective leaders that I've met over the years are optimistic. They don't pour sugar on the story. I mean, when it's raining, it's okay to say, hey, it's raining. But what they do is they reassure the team that, you know what, it's raining, and the rain will probably continue for some time, but eventually the rain will stop. We're going to get through this. We're going to get through it together. That sense of optimism, especially under pressure, is a critical characteristic of the effective leader.
The fundamental lesson, Srikanth, that applies to all three really is, how do you build a business or a professional service or a country, if you're a leader, a political leader, for example, that is relevant in the future marketplace? And how do you then bring that insight back into the present? So it's the ability as a business, for example, to imagine who your customers are in the future. How do they live? What do they need? And what will they pay you a premium for? And then to start building the foundations today for delivering on those questions into the future. And it doesn't happen on, a certain date It's a slow, sometimes a quick process, actually, as you arrive at that moment. For a professional, and I'm here, I guess we're talking about, my daughter, for example, recently qualified as a chartered accountant in London. And I've said to her, it's potentially the most useless investment I've ever made, this education of yours, because a lot of what auditors do will become replaced by smart systems, artificial intelligence. But the ability to think about context, the ability to ask probing questions, the ability to understand context will be what sets her apart and makes her relevant as a chartered accountant. So professionals need to ask themselves this question: what business are you actually in? And a chartered accountant is not in the business of verifying your balance sheet. A lawyer is not in the business of cutting and pasting clauses to put a contract together. A lawyer is in the business of understanding the client problem and addressing that through multiple ways and coming up with a pragmatic, affordable, relevant solution. The machines at this stage, AI won't do that very well, but an AI will put together a standard contract in a second with no spelling errors, right? So if you're a healthcare professional, if you're an architect, if you're a lawyer, if you're a finance professional, ask yourself, what is the essence of your value proposition and how do you stay relevant in bringing the solutions to the marketplace? How do you leverage the power of computers and smart systems to do that more humanly and more relevantly?
That kind of, you start off with and give them that sense of being, saying that, yes, this is not a company. It is not, it is yours, right? And when I look back and see my team that I've built over the last 11 years, the guys are still with me. Even, the oldest and most probably the second employee, I would say, has been with me for 8 years. So building that team is very important and having that sense of ownership. And we kind of have 100% transparency. The entire team, we are a small team. We are not like 10, 20. We are 5 and we want to stick to those 5. And each one of them, they know what is happening. How is it, what is our inflow? What is our outflow? I feel they have that sense of freedom to come and say, at times I might just go, I just slightly excited and say, let's buy a new piece of equipment. The team will come back and say, yes, we will. But this month we had only 2 shoots. So let's wait. When the business picks up, let's invest. Right? So that is very important. The team should feel the sense of ownership and they should also feel that it's their company. That's when the best comes out.
Well, that's a wrap. I hope you enjoyed the perspectives from our inspirers to this Flashback 10 series. Would love to hear what your takeaway was. Hey, by the way, have you checked out our new website? If not, do stop by at www.inspiresomeonetoday.in. That's www.inspiresomeonetoday.in. There are some cool IST merchandises to win if you can tag IST amongst your network or leave us a review. Thanks for listening. This is your channel on amplifying inspiration. Until next time, stay safe and keep inspiring.
Thank you for listening into today's edition of Inspire Someone Today. It's been a privilege to bring in these conversations. If you like this episode and have any feedback or comments, do mail me at inspiresomeonetodaypodcast@gmail.com. Inspiring someone is like creating ripples around us. If you like what to listen, feel free to share them and let's create ripples of inspiration. Do not forget to follow me on my Instagram handle @InspireSomeoneTodayPodcast for all the latest updates. This is Srikanth, your host, signing off, and until next time, keep inspiring.